In this video, we're going to talk about using properties of parallelograms, and at the end of the video, there are 2 questions that you can earn for bonus points. So, first off, a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with both pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. And the term parallelogram PQRS can be written as, we draw a little mini parallelogram, and then PQRS. So in parallelogram PQRS, the sets of sides that are parallel are side PQ is parallel to RS, and QR is parallel to PS. So if we have a parallelogram, or if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, there's some different characteristics that we know. There's 4 of them. So first, that its opposite sides are congruent. So if you see in the picture over here, you can see that each set of opposite sides are congruent. So 2 different sets are congruent. And if we're given an equation, or if we're given different values of those sides, we would set them equal to solve for that variable. The same thing is true of the opposite angles. So each pair of opposite angles will be congruent. And again, if they give us some different pieces with them, we can set them equal and then solve for that variable. So we've got 2 more characteristics of a parallelogram. So this is one that this is a little bit different. So your consecutive angles like XY, XY, and XY, and XY, that they are supplementary, and that's the part you got to remember. And so we can add the pairs of them together to equal 180 degrees. Next, we have that our diagonals are bisecting each other. So you can kind of see in the picture over here that we have both of these pieces. So MP and MR are congruent to each other, and QM and MS are congruent. We don't know that necessarily that the full length of the diagonals are the same, but each piece will be congruent to each piece. So we're going to use these 4 characteristics of parallelograms to solve some different questions. So example 1 is we want to find the values of X and Y in our problem. So in our picture, we can see where we know that the opposite sides are congruent, and that's because we know it is a parallelogram. We also know that the opposite angles are congruent. And from these 2 things, we can set some different pieces equal. So we know the opposite angles are congruent. We know that Y equals 65. And that's pretty much it for the Y, because we already have it solved then, so our Y is done. For the angles, when they are, not the angles, sorry, if we have our opposite sides are congruent, then we can set our opposite sides equal to each other. So our X plus 4 is equal to the 12. So we can subtract our 4 from both sides. So we get X equals 8. All right, so we've got 2 more examples, and then you have the chance for 2 bonus questions at the end that you can solve before you come to class. So the first one, example 2, you need to find the indicated measure of parallelogram JKLM. So we need to remember some different pieces. We know that the pieces of our diagonals will be congruent to each other. So we're going to use the fact that we know that KN, so those first markings I put in there, KN is congruent to NM. So in my picture, I know that this piece will also be to NM. And then since KM is the whole distance, I'm just taking the 2 plus 2. So 2 plus 2. So I know that that's going to equal the whole diagonal will be 4. So next we're looking at the angles. And one thing I want to remember is that our consecutive angles are supplementary. So we know that if here is our general picture, and we know this angle right here is 110, and if I gave this as X, I know that 110 plus X has to equal 180 degrees for that other angle because they're consecutive. So I know that this angle right here has to be 70 degrees, and that is my angle JML. So this whole piece has to be 70, but since I already know the 30, then I know that this other piece or other part of it is 70 minus my 30. So then that means that there's 40 degrees left, and that is angle KML, and that is 40 degrees. All right, so for the very last example, for finding the values of m and n, since we are given diagonals, I know again that these two pieces of my diagonals are congruent. So I have 3m equals, m plus 8. And then I also have another equation, is with the other diagonals, I can say that 9 is congruent to my 2n minus 1. So there's my two different equations I can solve. So if I'm already on the blue one, I'm just going to keep on going on that one. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I get 10 equals 2n. And then I need to divide everything by 2. So I get n equals 5. And now for my green one, I can subtract my m to the other side. So my 1m. So I get 2m. 2m, there we go, equals my 8. I divide both sides by my 2. I end up with m equals 4. All right, so just like you see in this question right here, you can earn 1 bonus point for each of these questions. So since there's 2 questions, you could earn 1 point for each. So that'd be 2 points total. Now realize for the first one, you have to get x and y correct. And same with the second one, you have to get the g and the f correct to get your full point. So remember, you're using consecutive angles are going to be supplementary. We know opposite angles are going to be congruent. Opposite sides are congruent. And opposite sides are congruent again. So this one doesn't have any diagonals in here. Good luck.